I'm Virginia Ladd. I'm founder and president of the American Autoimmune Association. I'm not going to give you the big, long things like I did for the doctor. The reason I'm speaking today and coping with autoimmune disease from a patient's perspective is I am a patient. I have 3 or 4. If you live long enough with an autoimmune disease, you get to collect them, and I've collected quite a few. But I was diagnosed with lupus when I was 23 years old. People think that I must have had a very hard time being diagnosed because I'm such a warrior about earlier diagnosis and the problems that people have. But it so happens I was one of those patients like Dr. Fox described. I woke up one morning, had a rash across my face that I hadn't had when I went to bed. My knees were swollen, and I was passing blood in my urine. And the only symptom I had before that is I had been really tired for a couple of months before that, but I blamed it on just having a baby. You know, you're up in the middle of the night, and I blamed my fatigue on that. So I did not have a difficult time being diagnosed at all. But I certainly have had long years of experience of living with an autoimmune disease. And through those years, I've picked up a lot of tips of ways of coping and managing and finding your way around the disease, I like to say, jumping some of the hurdles. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I think I just pressed this to go to the next one. No? Okay, next. There we go. So you have to take, one of the things I found, you better take control of your illness, because we all know you can see many different doctors, and if you don't have a sense of control over your illness and become your own best advocate, it can be very difficult. I put this cartoon up there because you can see, this is what sometimes the patient's in the middle, but you can hardly find the patient, because there's the doctors, there's the lawyers, there's the nurses, there's now the insurance company. I like the insurance company being on the floor there, but unfortunately now the insurance company is the biggest person around, determining what medicines you can get, what tests you can get, and that harkens back to our Let My Doctor Decide, which is a national campaign that AARDA is heading up with other organizations, trying to work on legislation throughout the country, because many times now it's not your doctor that gets to decide, it's the insurance company that's deciding what medication you can have. And for autoimmune patients, where patients are very individual, you heard Dr. Fox say, there's rheumatoid arthritis patients are all very different from each other. Lupus patients are all very different from each other. So throughout the whole autoimmune, because the immune system is such a delicate and it's such a precise system, but very individual to you. And so that makes treatment, sometimes you have to go through several treatments to find one that works for you. And in step therapy, that's what the Let My Doctor Decide is about, is where the insurance company tells the doctor, no, this patient cannot have this until they fail on this and fail on this and fail on this, and then they can have the drug that the doctor wanted to give them to begin with. And there's just something unethical about that. Who's making the decision? So you could pick up more information, I believe, on that if you haven't already. So I put this cartoon up because this is the way the patient is often has to deal with all of these different entities, which can be very. So getting a diagnosis, as we've talked about, can be very difficult. And you can go for, we know patients go, as has been stated before, sometimes see 3 or 4 doctors over a 3 or 4 or 5 year period. And that study that we did, that's just looking at 5 of the most serious autoimmune diseases. It didn't look at the 100 of autoimmune. So somebody with a rare autoimmune disease probably has much longer time getting a diagnosis than even the 3 doctors in the 4 or 5 years. And one of the reasons is, as you could see with what Rita put up there and what the doctor put up there, you can have many different symptoms that can accompany many different things. So the symptoms of autoimmune disease can very much be quite broad and mimic many other conditions. So if you present, and particularly autoimmune diseases tend to target young women in their childbearing years, and they often look very healthy. And we know that the symptoms can come and go. So they show up at the doctor, they know something's wrong, I'm very tired. Oh, well, you should be. You're working and you have 2 or 3 children and you're married, and yes, that should make you tired. But patients are talking about exhaustion, not being tired. So we actually tell patients, don't use the word tired or fatigue. Use the word that you're too exhausted to actually function to do the things you want to do. We all can be very tired when we have something we don't want to do, but this is if you want to do it. So that's a way of describing it, but it can be very difficult to get a diagnosis, and a very frustrating and a very stressful time. And as we heard before, stress can actually be an aggravator in autoimmune diseases. So the diagnosis part is the beginning of the journey. If you're one of those people that you don't just pop up like myself and have all these symptoms in one day. So symptoms can be confusing even to the doctor. I don't know. Yes, you're tired. Well, other people are tired. You're tired if you're depressed. You're tired if you're anemic. You can be tired for you're overworked. You could be tired because you're under a lot of stress. So there's lots of reasons. Fatigue accompanies cancer, it accompanies heart disease, and it accompanies autoimmune disease. We think it's a little different in autoimmune diseases. So I'm just going to give you a little snippet of a background on that because we're actually quite proud of this. So we did a survey, and we often do these surveys. We put it on Facebook. Please come take our survey. We're interested in this. We did a survey on fatigue, and we had 7,800 and some people fill out that survey within a couple of days. That was unheard of. That was phenomenal. So this must really be a big issue. We thought it was because we were hearing about it all the time from patients. But that was just, what? This many people? So we looked at those surveys and we found out this was such an important issue to these people filling out this survey that they would put it down as the reason for divorce, the reason for filing for disability, the reason for losing their job. Wow, they could have kidney disease, but they were putting down fatigue as the problem that was most significant to them. And some people even put it in words like, because of the fatigue, I've lost my life. I've lost my ability to live. And so that sounded just so profound. So I personally went then and did kind of a med search. Well, where's the research on this? Is this just tiredness and fatigue? Or is there a physical mechanism? Is there a scientific, biological mechanism behind this fatigue? And we virtually found one research project in Australia on MS that actually looked at fatigue and if stimulating the brain could help the fatigue, which, by the way, it did. So I thought, well, that's strange. Here is a symptom that so many people with autoimmune diseases are reporting, and why isn't there research on that? Because patients also reported that it was the symptom that they felt their doctors took the least serious of whatever they were saying. So we found out, and we did a scientific colloquium where we brought experts from all different backgrounds to look at this, and that was just recently published. And so now what we're trying to do is to get more research dollars to look at this aspect of autoimmune disease, to see, is there a mechanism, is there something going on that's unique to autoimmune patients? And we're applying actually for a grant to NIH to conduct that study. So I just thought you'd be interested. That's kind of a background on what we're doing about that symptom, but we think that it should be very interesting. So tips for getting to a correct diagnosis. Do keep track of the symptoms and when you experience them. We really emphasize know your family history of autoimmune diseases, and if it's relevant, share with a physician. Because what we have found, and to this day, we have not been able to get that. You know how when you go in to see a doctor at the new time, they give you all those papers? The first 5 are giving them permission to even see you. I don't know why you'd be there if you didn't want to allow them to see you. But anyway, I've been through this many times, filling out all these forms. And then there's the family history, and they don't ask about autoimmune disease. They might ask about arthritis. They might ask about diabetes, but even then it will be general diabetes. It won't be type 1 diabetes, which is the autoimmune type. So that family history is very important because we do know that these diseases do run in families, but not always as the same disease. So the family doesn't necessarily know that Crohn's is related to so-and-so's rheumatoid arthritis, but it is. There's a definite connection there. So that's one of the reasons that we've been pushing Know Your Family History. We have a slogan, Know Your AQ, your autoimmune quotient. But share that with your doctor, because the first step in getting a diagnosis is for somebody to think about it. Isn't that sounds funny, but I had a doctor say that once when he was asking when we were doing an interview on TV. He said, well, the first step is for somebody to think of it, and hopefully that's the physician. But a lot of times it's not the physician. If you look at your family history and you understand that, somebody else in the family may say, well, have they checked for autoimmune disease? And you can also be an advocate for other people in the family, because it doesn't have to be the same disease. So mention the most serious problems first, because if you mention all the little things that happen to a lot of us, pretty soon you do sound like a hypochondriac. This twitch and that whatever. The most serious problems first. I'm so exhausted, I cannot function in my job. I cannot, so they understand it's not just you're tired because you didn't get enough sleep. My joints are so sore that I'm having trouble walking or I'm having trouble going up steps. A good one on the fatigue is I can't go up all the steps. I myself had this experience. My fatigue was so bad that I could get up about half of the steps and I had to crawl the rest of the way up. There's no way I could make my body go up the rest of the steps. That's how fatigued I would be, how exhausted I would be. So mention the most serious problems first. Describe your symptoms in terms and how they impact on your health and lifestyle. I think that's really important. As I said, just, you can't do this because you want to do it, but you can't do it because of this. I'm not able to take care of my children as I thought I should. I'm not able to keep up with my job. Then this is an important one, and I think this might be a difference between why 50-some% of women are told they might be too concerned with their health, and I think it's only about 7% of men. That's a big difference. Now, it's true, men don't get autoimmune diseases as frequently as women by a long shot, but is there something else? Women tend to want to enable. They've been to 3 doctors already, so they really want to help this doctor get to the bottom of their problem. So maybe they tell the doctor so much that the doctor kind of starts writing them off. Men, now this is not broadly stated, tend to go to the doctor because somebody made an appointment for them, first of all. They didn't make it themselves. So they sit in there and the doctor says, so what are you in here for? I don't know, my wife made the appointment. But the doctor starts dragging information out of them, and that maybe engages them more. So that engages the doctor more. So stop, pause, and let the doctor ask you questions so that the doctor will be more engaged in trying to help you get to the bottom of it. Mention the vague symptoms last. They might be important, but once you see you're being taken serious, that's the time to say, but at night my toes feel numb, or something like that. Or I have this twitch, or I get this twitch up here, or whatever, because we all have things like that. Everybody, but they don't have any problem. They have some things like that. But how do you know what's normal, and how do you know what's a sign of something? So understand your illness and the treatment plan established by your doctor. I love this one because if you look at that, how many of you comprehend the term follicular? And the other people are saying, what does comprehend mean? So the patient and the doctor are talking past each other. The doctor's telling you one thing, you're under stress at even being there, you're not quite understanding, it's okay to stop the doctor and say, could you explain that to me? Or what does that word mean? And make sure that when you're talking about your treatment and your illness, that you're talking about the same thing. Because that's very important. Miscommunication can have a very detrimental effect on your treatment. Following the treatment plan designed by your physician is vital. Okay. So this happens a lot in autoimmune diseases. I've seen it many, many, many times over the years. And you do have to be an advocate for yourself, and there's lots of things that you might try. But if you trust the doctor, follow the treatment plan designed by them, or question why. This doesn't seem to be working. Is there something that's less toxic that I can try? You can ask all those questions, but once you've trusted the doctor, go with it, because they know a lot more than your neighbor and the internet. We tend to go to the internet now and find out all kinds of things that haven't been proven or may be proven or may be helpful, may not be helpful, but somebody thought they were helpful, and you don't know if what worked for your neighbor might be detrimental for you. You don't know that over-the-counter thing that they're trying, that they're telling you works so good, because now they have energy. They might be drinking a lot of the hot shot caffeine. Yeah, you'll have more energy, but what's that going to do to you? So always discuss, especially in this day and age when there are so many things out there, and I take supplements myself. I study them very carefully. I look for good science behind anything that I take, but I always share with the doctor what I am taking, because I don't want it to interfere with the medication that I'm taking, and I don't want to be taking something that the doctor thinks I'm taking and it's being, not being utilized, my body's not utilizing it because I'm taking something else. So share that. Doctors are much more open. When I started on this journey, and I will tell you, it was, 60 years ago, that was just unheard of, that you would take a supplement. I mean, that wasn't even out there. But now alternative approaches to treating diseases is very much part, and doctors are incorporating it more and more and more into their practices. So don't be afraid to discuss it. So let your doctor know if a new symptom is occurring. That's important too, because sometimes the doctor's looked at your thing, you've been there 5 times. It's important if they know if a new symptom comes up, because that might be a sign that inflammatory process has either moved to a different point or it has increased. But try to explain it clearly, because I love this cartoon, because he's saying, the doctor's saying, you must clearly explain your problem, but he doesn't even notice that the mouse has a mousetrap and can't talk. So sometimes, again, explaining a new symptom is very important, and making sure the doctor understands. Doctor, this is new. I've never experienced this before, but this is what's happening. That's important, and make sure the doctor's listening. He or she needs to listen to you on that. So we already talked about fatigue, so I won't go too much into that anymore, but fatigue may accompany many of the autoimmune diseases. Again, explain it as exhaustion. Here it is. Let's assume that's 8 o'clock in the morning because the patient's having coffee. 8 o'clock in the morning, you shouldn't be that exhausted. You should not be sitting there holding your head up. And I will say, for significant others, my husband, who was always very good, he has passed away, but he was the reason I lived with lupus. He never made me feel bad about it. He always was my helpmate. And I asked him once, because he'd call me sometimes, or sometimes he'd say, you know what, why don't we call out and get something delivered for dinner? That wasn't common when I was diagnosed. That would be a rare exception. Now you can call Uber and they'll bring it right to your door. But it wasn't common then. And I said, well, how do you know? Because I wasn't telling him how tired I was. And he says, because every time you need help, you're holding your head up. And I thought, that's true. That's what I'd be doing. I'd be sitting down holding my head up, because even holding my head up was tiring. And that he noticed that. And that's when he would always then try to help me out, or be more of a help. So sometimes sharing with your significant other, and significant other being on the lookout for those signs, that can be helpful too. So if you have an autoimmune disease that requires a special diet, follow that diet. It's very important. And a lot of people these days are into a lot of specialty diets. Be very careful with that, because a lot of the times the diet that somebody else recommends, this is really, really good, it's an anti-inflammatory diet. Not necessarily the diet for you. You might need a lot of the vitamin Bs that are in grains, like a lot of times we now have people saying, well, don't eat bread. It's got gluten in it. Well, who said you were gluten sensitivity? Are you sure you're gluten sensitive? If you're not gluten sensitive, well, we get a lot of the B vitamins, the vitamins that help our brain and our neurological system can come from grains. So you might be depriving yourself. So see a good nutritionist, a good balanced diet, and then you can do the elimination if you think, why not? But don't do it all at the same time. I don't know. Somebody told me my problems could be related to, it could be related to milk, and it could be related to gluten, and it might be beef. Well, I'm going to cut out all of those. Well, then how do you know which one really is? So if you are going to do that, start with one thing and see if it helps, and stick with it long enough to see if it helps. You can expect to have a variety of emotional responses. This is very normal. At first, you might be angry. I mean, why did I get this? Why me? Why is somebody picking on me? This is the third thing I've happened. And then you might feel sad about it. Sometimes you have to really learn to laugh at yourself. But you have a variety of emotional responses. Allow yourself to go through those emotional stages. But if after a year you're diagnosed, many times people are so happy to get a diagnosis that they were depressed. Now they're no longer depressed once they are diagnosed, because now they can deal with the problem. Because they were depressed when they weren't diagnosed, because that was very frustrating. But whatever your emotional response is, if you find that you're in a stressed, anxiety, or depressive state for longer than 6 or 7 months, it's okay to seek help and get help with that, because we have coaches for everything. I mean, people go to have a coach for exercising. Why not have a coach to help you through some emotional times? Nothing wrong with that. Understanding these responses and their causes will help you determine what works best for you in overcoming them. So it's a learning process. It took me a long time to learn to live well with autoimmune diseases. I had many frustrating experiences. One that stands out in my mind, because early on, I was told several times, actually, before I was 30, that I wouldn't live to 30. I have to tell you, I have outlived all 3 doctors that told me that. So there you are. And I'm not going to tell you my age, but I'm way past the mark of the 30, more than double past it. I'm not going any further than that. So I am on Medicare, and if they have something for beyond that, I'm approaching that. So, no, all right, I will tell you, because there is one aspect of lupus that has been very good to me. People usually say, when I ask them, how old do you think I am? 8 to 10 years younger than I am. It's all that sunscreen I had to use. All my life, ever since I've been 23 years old, I had to use sunscreen and wear hats, and because I was very sensitive to the sun. And it actually made me sick. If I exposed myself to the sun, it wasn't only a sunburn, it would be sick. 3 days later, I could count on it, I'd be sick. All my joints would be inflamed, so I really was sensitive to the sun. So that's what I attribute to. And when I was diagnosed, they didn't even have all these fancy sunscreens at all. The doctor gave me this jar of something that looked like tar. And it was what they used if you were swimming the English Channel, you put this red pake, it was called, tar on your face. Well, yeah, really, I'm going to wear that? No, I don't think at 23 years old I'm going to smear that all over my face every time I go out. Anyway, fortunately, within a couple of years, sunscreen was born. And they've perfected it to take out a lot of the toxins that were in the early sunscreens that I had to use. So understanding, your emotions and that can be really help. This one I use because I really learned if you use iMessages with others, you are far, far more likely to get the help you need. If you need help, you have to ask for it. But this is not the way to ask for it. I'm hurting today. Can't you understand? I can't get off the couch. Can't you take care of the kids? Can't you see that I'm hurt? No. How about, I don't really feel well today. I really could use your help. You know what that tells the significant other? That tells the significant other you're being honest and you're asking for their help. Significant others often feel very, very frustrated because when you have a chronic illness, you can't help but talk about it sometimes, and you burn out your friends and you burn out your neighbor and you can burn out your family just talking about it. Well, they're so frustrated because they actually love you and want to help you, but they don't know what to do. So you can just say to them, I don't really feel good today. I need your help. And your help today is just listen to me for 5 minutes and then I'll shut up about this. Now they know that'll help you? Okay, now I can listen. But if this is the 4th time that week they've heard about your joints hurting, they're probably not going to listen to that. So use I messages and give back. I always say give back when you're feeling good, help out that person. Find something to do something special because they were special and helped you. So chronic illness often has so many ups and downs that it can be emotionally draining. I think we can all, how many people would agree with that? You kind of get tired of dealing with it. You get tired of coping with it. I mean, I just want this to be over. Well, it's chronic. It's not going to be over. It'll have ups and downs, but it's not going to be over. So I have always tried to look at this as, okay, this is my life challenge. This is what I was dealt. I'm going to live past 30, darn you doctors. Nobody's going to tell me. There's only, I believe, one entity that knows when my life will come to an end, and it's not the doctor. And it's not my neighbor who had an aunt that died with lupus or whatever. So, okay, I've got this challenge in life. Other people have other challenges. Look around. You can see all kinds of challenges. It might be their marriage. It might be a disability. It might be they have a child with a disability. Their job might be everybody has some challenges in life. So if you think of it as a challenge, you could I like to think of it as hurdles. And this is one of my secrets of living with autoimmune disease. And I could give you some examples if Kathy doesn't shut me down too fast. Here, because she's got her sign up there telling me how many minutes. 5 more minutes. Oh, boy. So I like to think of it as hurdles. So hurdles are something you get over, right? You jump over and you're over the hurdle. But with a lot of creative thought, you could actually get under that hurdle without anybody knowing you didn't get over it. My husband, he was really very, very supportive, and sometimes that house was just a disaster. I had 3 little kids under the age of 5. I had lupus. It was 6 o'clock at night. He was going to be home any minute. The living room looked like you needed a pogo stick to get through it even, and dinner wasn't even started. Okay, what do I could do? Well, he likes cookies. I do have those slice-off cookies. Let me put those in the oven real quick. So when he opened the door, oh, that smells great. What is that? Oh, that's cookies. Oh, but we have to go out to eat. You see, going out to eat followed the cookies. That worked every time, and he understood. So that's one of the ways. But I could write a book on the different things that I devised to help myself get through lupus and the various autoimmune diseases since, just by finding a way around or under the hurdle, but not really getting under the hurdle didn't make that much of a difference. I traded with my neighbor once, who I did actually like to cook. I like to bake, and she didn't, but she didn't mind watching the kids. So, hey, could you watch these 3 little kids here while I take a nap, and I'll fix your dessert for tonight. That was a big deal to her. She thought that was a win-win. I thought it was a win-win because I could slice off those cookies. And she would take my kids and take them to the park with her kids. And that gave me time to rest in the afternoon because the doctor was always telling me, almost like it was my fault, you have to rest. You have to rest. Well, yeah, I would love to rest, but you tell me how I do that with 3 kids, little kids. So I devised ways like that, making deals with other people to help me out. Instead of asking for just her help, I had something to give back that she needed. So lots of hurdles like that, and I have a lot of them, but so it's a balancing act because this is a big one also. One of the things I found, the best control of your autoimmune disease is to keep that inflammatory process under control. You heard the doctor mention how much inflammation was a part of these diseases. Well, what do we tend to do? And I'm going to ask you to raise your hands on this if Kathy doesn't shut me up first. How many times are you just too exhausted and say, oh, okay, now that's a couch day. You may have 2 or 3 couch days. Well, rest actually is very restorative in autoimmune diseases. So now you feel better, and what do? You get up and try to catch up with everything you didn't get done. How many people have experienced this? Up and down. Look at all the hands. Up and down, up and down, up and down. Well, think of inflammation as a little flame. And I used to think of I have a little candle inside of me. And the minute I would start feeling that, hey, wait a minute. If you put bellows on a flame, what happens? They get bigger. Oh, it's time to pull back. Even a 20-minute rest at this time is going to save me 2 days the next day. But if I keep going at this rate, because I was one of these compulsive people in a way, if I cleaned the house, it had to be a spring cleaning. I even tried, well, I'll clean one room at a time. That won't be, well, then that one room got the walls washed. You know, come on. I was compulsive about it. So I had to learn to balance that energy, balancing the times that you're very busy instead of the up and down, up and down, up and down. And I think that was probably the most important thing I ever learned in controlling my disease. Because once I was able to get that into my mind, to pace myself throughout the week, I got much better. I just did much better after that. Well, there's the thing. I don't have to say it now. Learn to pace your activity. It's a vicious cycle if it's up and down, up and down, up and down. Because every time you get that inflammatory process going, then you got to get it back down. And then once you get it down, if you overdo it, it's back up. So, and this is what family. Do we have significant others here? You live with an autoimmune patient? Wow, where are they today? Oh, darn those people. It's a nice day. They went fishing or something. Well, that's what they find the hardest, because they see you really busy, and then they see you on the couch. And they can't quite figure this out. You're telling them how tired you are, but then they saw all this that you did, and they can't quite figure that out. Well, it really has a physiological component to it of overdoing and pacing yourself. So it's a very important, it can become a vicious cycle, but very hard. As husbands have often, we used to do this program for just significant others, and one time I had to lead that because the person didn't show up, and I was surprised that the people who had been so supportive when everybody was together had a lot to say when they weren't together. And the significant others were saying this was just one of the things, this up and down, up and down, up and down. It was like living with a roller coaster. Many of them explained it that way. So give yourself and your family time to adjust. Everybody doesn't adjust at the same time. If you came from a family where you had a cold, your mother put you to bed, gave you chicken soup, covered you up, took your temperature every hour, then you're going to have a different approach to illness in a mate than somebody whose mother said, all right, get up, get ready to go to school. I don't care if you got a sore throat, you're going to school. Because that person is going to have a different perspective about what it is like to feel bad and what you need to do. So you have to adjust to that. And oftentimes you can help that person adjust whichever way they're going by just having conversation. Say, look, I know this, you might think that I'm being a baby, but if I don't take the time off today, I'm going to be sicker tomorrow, and I don't want that, and I know you don't want that, so let me have my rest today so that we can go on, do whatever we want to do over the weekend. Join a support group for persons with chronic illness can be very helpful to many patients. My only caution on this is don't go to pity parties. Go to professionally led groups, because people with chronic illness, we don't challenge each other. So you tell me all about your problems, and I tell you all about my problems, and where are we? Because I don't say to you, well, yes, but what did you do 3 days before that? You told me that you did this, 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 and you were still up doing something at 11 o'clock at night. I don't say that to the other patient, but a leader might say, what did you do? Well, how did you bring this on? So they might help you get the work done, but I have found a lot of support groups turn into pity parties, and you don't need that. You have enough to deal with without taking everybody else's problems home with you. So understand that you did nothing to cause your illness, and that life is not always fair. I would think we all learned that by the time we played on a playground at 5 years old. Life is not fair. We all have challenges. We all have problems. Listen to other people's problems and they'll listen to yours. Okay, Kathy. Oh, I got the end. All right, real quick. Do become as knowledgeable about your disease as possible, because you have to be your own advocate. Take your medicine as prescribed. Try within reason to avoid contact with infections. So people have gotten much better about that with the hand creams and that, or the hand sanitizers and that. Follow your treatment plan. Keep a record of the drugs you're taking and keep it with you. I can't tell you the number of times where I've had to pull that out of my wallet instead of recording all those medications when I go to a new doctor. Do avoid anxiety and tension. Good luck on that one. Keep your, maybe the next speaker's going to help you with that one. Keep a list of the questions to ask your doctor, because you might forget. It might be an important question, but by the time you get that 3-week appointment, you've forgot it. Get enough rest. We've become a society that thinks we have to stay up to listen to the night comedian. We don't. People used to go to bed when the sun went down, and they would get up at dawn. Their circadian rhythm was in sync with that. We've put that out of sync. Well, that's all part of your hormonal balance, as Rita would tell you. Follow good health habits with regard to, we found out about smoking and alcohol.